Thank you for attending today. My name is Sugant Chandan. I'm one of the coordinators of the Malcolm X movement, which is just starting up literally in the coming weeks and months. This is part of the program of the first Malcolm X Summer Festival. In the spring, we had the Malcolm X Film Festival, which was supported by 42 organizations, including the Black Panther alumni, which respected elder brother Conway, Eddie Conway, is a part of. The Black Panther alumni is basically the Veterans Association of the Black Panther Party. Also supported by Leila Khaled and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and many others. So today, we have our special guest of honor, who is Eddie Conway, but also the title of the event points to the fact that we're trying to scope a historical, political landscape from Baltimore to Brixton. Brother Eddie Conway was the local Baltimore leader of the Black Panthers, and then he was snatched and detained and kidnapped by the US state for 44 years since 1970, released last year in March. Now, this is not only about Eddie Conway and Sister Dominique Stevenson, who's here with Brother Eddie, but also about our legacy of struggle, which ties into the Black liberation movement broadly in the United States. I'm really pleased to say that we have one of our stalwart and veteran activists and revolutionaries from the capital of the heart of whiteness, and one of the members of the Black Unity Freedom Party, that's Minkah Odofo, and all of you, I'm sure, will know Minkah quite well. Now, just by way of introduction, just for a few minutes before I ask Brother Minkah to first open up, if that's okay, and then it'll be Sister Dominique and then Brother Eddie. Now, the Black Panther Party was a revolutionary organization in the United States, formed in October 1966. And they were a part of an intergenerational struggle of our people. And when I say our people are those who have been put into the zone below humanity, into the zone of non-being. And that globalized power that did that is European colonialism, which is a multi-headed hydra from which all the oppressions spring from. Misogyny, white supremacy, disrespect to our elders, our families, our children, our ancestors, the way we see and reflect on ourselves, the epistemological and ontological genocide. I hate those two words, excuse me. It just means ways of thinking and ways of being, basically. So it was part of that intergenerational struggle. Now, why were the comrades of the Black Panthers killed, some drugged and in their sleep, in the case of Martyr Fred Hampton? And why were some of those comrades put in jail for longer than many of us have been on this planet? Because they had the temerity and the audacity to, first of all, say no to that oppression. And James Baldwin, to paraphrase James Baldwin, famously said that the whole white world shakes in fear whenever a black man defines things for himself. And it was part of that resistance of black people that made the United States feel that they were the greatest internal threat to the security of the United States, the greatest public enemy, quote unquote, and punished them. But more than that is because the Black Panthers united with other oppressed groups, and it was young Martyr Fred Hampton who pioneered and instituted the first Rainbow Coalition with other native revolutionary groups, the Young Lords, the Puerto Ricans, the so-called Latinos, quote unquote, etc. But more than that, not only did they say no and resist the US white power structure, not only did they unite with other oppressed groups and form alliances with them, but they had the audacity to reach out to people like the Vietnamese, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Mozambicans, the Angolans, the Algerians, the Zimbabweans, the South Africans, etc. Can you imagine a revolutionary movement of black and brown people today in the West that, like the Black Panthers, offered their own members to the Vietnamese resistance to fight the US occupation? The parallel today is radical black organizations in the West offering their members to the Libyan resistance, fighting the NATO and the death squads, to the Syrian resistance, to anywhere where there's a conflagration between the enemy, which is neo-colonialism, and our people. Can you imagine? It was that the Panthers raised our liberation struggle so high, and it was the same reason they were punished for doing that, as was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He had the audacity to sympathize with the Vietnamese, to reject American capitalism, and to sympathize with the African liberation struggles. And the same thing went with the namesake of our movement, Malcolm X. Perhaps he crossed up that ultimate red line as well, where he said, actually, the resistance movements of the so-called Third World are our ideological and actual leadership and inspiration. His visits to the Middle East and Africa, teaming up with Kwame Nkrumah and the revolutionary group for black revolutionaries in Accra, Maya Angelou, Shirley Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, etc. He united with the FLN in Algeria, with the Palestinians and Jamal Abdel Nasser, etc. So these are some of the themes by which the Malcolm X movement are inspired by, and we seek to replicate that example of struggle of the Black Panthers. Whether what we can achieve remains to be seen, but there's some interesting things occurring. There's many other things I haven't talked about. I know there was a police shooting in this community just yesterday. Perhaps Brother Minkah will reference that as well. So all these things, grassroots, serving the people, opposing police brutality, supporting our prisoners, supporting the global resistance ideologically and practically, are some of the themes I think that we can be more proud on and celebrate, and that which can inform our movement today. With that, I would like you to welcome Brother Minkah Odofo, who's going to impart some of his ideas, and particularly the legacy of the Black Unity Freedom Party. Please welcome Brother Minkah.
Yeah, thank you, brothers who came. My gosh. Greetings, brothers and sisters. When I came to this meeting, when Sukan spoke to me, I came to this meeting thinking I was coming to hear this great man here. And he threw something down and he said he wanted me to say a few words on the Black Unity Freedom Party, but that's all right. So first of all, I want to thank Brother Sukan from the Malcolm X movement for organizing this event today, in particularly focusing on 45 years of the Black Panther Party. Sorry, that just goes to show I'm tired, is it? No. 45 years of the founding of the Black Unity and Freedom Party in Britain. Now, before I go on, can I just see a show of hands of anybody that's heard of the Black Unity and Freedom Party before? Okay, well, that's a reasonable amount of people. We would say about 50%, 45%, 40% of the audience. So okay, so I'll say a little bit about that, but I want to first and foremost say it is my privilege and honor to be in the presence of Marshal Eddie Conway. This brother here, I didn't know him before Brother Sukan was speaking to me about him, but anybody that spends 44 years in prison, undoubtedly a political prisoner, deserves a massive applause and congratulations, a massive salute. Before I say a little bit about the Black Unity and Freedom Party, we were very much influenced by the Black Panther Party in America, and in their January 1970 edition, the Black Panther Party here, it states, to be a revolutionary is to be an enemy of the state. To be arrested for this struggle is to be a political prisoner. This is the ultimate sacrifice a person can make. And any movement, any serious movement, you know, and it just goes to show the weakness of our movement, and I'm sure we will touch on that, and Brother Eddie will touch on to that. The first demand they always make is free our political prisoners. And sadly, most of us not only don't know of our political prisoners to call for their prisoners, we know about moving out with your mouth, but there's many others locked down there, and I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that. And when I come to these meetings, it's good for us to talk about the 60s and the 70s. But you know, I don't come to these meetings for nostalgia. I come to these meetings to make it clear that this struggle continues. And at the end of my presentation, I'll just touch on some of those areas of work that need support. Okay? Now, I started off by mentioning that, asking who knew about the Black Unity and Freedom Party. Well, let me say straight away, there's many aspects of our struggles in Britain that many people don't know about. So I want to acknowledge my brother, Pablo, here, who has been a driving force in erecting a building just on our right called the Black Cultural Archives, which is not just, which is a fortress. So people that's not checked the archives over there, you need to check it out. Now for the Black Unity and Freedom Party, very quickly, as part of your history in Britain. In July 1970, as a result of a wider discussion within all kinds of social forces campaigning against racial discrimination, the Black Unity and Freedom Party was established July 1970, and that was in honor of the resistance taking place within Cuba around. In September of that year, we produced, and don't go too far ahead of me. I know my brother Eddie here looks younger than me, but I mean, not younger than brother Eddie here, right? It was only 1978 I actually joined the party. But one of the, don't ask me what I was doing before that chatting with the biography of Malcolm X. But anyway. Alright, that's before he joined the nation. Okay? In 1971, we produced Who Killed the Citizens, which was a sister that was killed in Stoke Newington Police Station. Brothers have kind of raised the point when I came here today, which is that a man got killed was shot yesterday by the police and said, well, maybe Brother Minkah may say something like that. And Brother Minkah has been saying a lot about that because he was involved in establishing a coalition of families whose loved one has been killed in custody. But those campaigns will not in any way address the issues of deaths in custody until we address the issue of the need for our own independent political party or movement controlled and directed by ourselves. And that's the significance of one of the main significance of the Black Panther Party is the significance of our organizing, which was to put an end to this oppression and victimization. So we've got there now in 1970. We were ideologically influenced, and ideas are very important because we talk about, yeah, we want liberation. Well, how are we going to get it? What's the kind of ideas that's going to form the basis for this liberation? When we go out there, as I was in the 1981 uprising, we said, let's go down and burn down that police station. And we started off with about what? 800 people? By the time I reached the station just down the road, we had about 20. The rest of them were were hitting the jewelry shops, hitting this shop and hitting that shop. We got to be clear, all right? Or otherwise we start off thinking that we're all on the same page, but we're not. So we were ideologically influenced by the Black Panther Party. And so when we struggled locally, we recognized the struggle. We had to connect it nationally and internationally. And the source of these attacks was imperialism. And we shouldn't just be always against, which is nice. It's good to be against things. But what is it that we were for? And we had to put on the table that we had to be for a social system that was based on the masses of our people and not on the few which capitalism and imperialism represented. And on that lines, we gathered and we worked closely with our Asian brothers and sisters at that time within the Black Unity and Freedom Party. And this question of ideas became very, very, very serious and sharp within our struggle. And so in 1972, in this country, we organized the first Africa Liberation Day, the Black Unity and Freedom Party, same one. And in 1975, there was another Africa Liberation Day organized by the Pan-African Congress movement. The Pan-Africanist Congress movement represented the ideas that the Black Panther called cultural nationalism. We, at the same time, rooted our politics in anti-imperialism. And so, you know, this may be, for some, just a theoretical question. People, it doesn't really matter. It's just different ideas. It's just another word. But we know the imperative of any idea when it's tested in struggle. So if we say we're for advancement and change and liberation, so when our community now comes under vicious attack by the National Front, by the Combat 18, where were these people who were talking about that they were against oppression of black people? Nowhere to be seen. So we had to be in alliance with our Asian and progressive white people that's prepared to take a stand. It wasn't just about talking. When it was the issue of motherland, African liberation of our motherland, when at that time, boiling was Angola. Angola, brother, yes sir. Boiling was South Africa, Mozambique, Namibia. You know, we had a situation in which some of our cultural nationalist brothers and sisters were saying to the African National Congress and the Black Consciousness Movement, if they were to send along an Asian comrade to address us on what is going on the front line of those struggles, which were people were being massacred on a day-to-day basis, they say, sorry, you're not African, you can't come in. This ain't got nothing to do with struggle. And we know this through its testing in practice. When you test people, that's when you see practice determines everything. You know, you can read as much as they want, talk as much as they want. Practice is the determining factor. So we adopted that position, and I'm going to fast forward. I've already get the time. There's no struggles that you can think of in the UK that the Black Union and Freedom Party has not been a central part of that. I was involved in 78, I joined it. In 1981, our party played a leading role in organizing the Black People's Day of Action. For some of you that quickly don't know, that was the aftermath of a brutal firebombing in Newcastle in which 13 of our young children was murdered. Pretty soon, and then the police tried to blame the people attending the party for causing that fire. So much of the outrage that as soon after that there was a fire in Northern Ireland, in Ireland. The Queen sent condolences to these people, and yet we, as black people here, didn't get none. And coming back to the ideas, our struggle was not just against the cultural nationalists, which was basically not about struggle, but in fact also about the so-called socialists. You can call yourself as much as you want. The Panthers call them the white left. We were informed by that, which is that they say they're so-called left, but their view was really of the white world, white center, just Eurocentrist, just racism in a left-wing form. And so we had to fight for ourselves, we had to fight for our community tooth and nail. So that was 81. For you, just in case many of the people who never said black people come out on the street, we mobilized at that time up to 25,000 predominantly black people on the streets of London. It was like what Malcolm X calls it, a black steamroller. Everywhere you look, it's just pure blackness. It just, as Malcolm X says, it scared the power structure to death. And this is where we then lead on to now, an increasing division, in fact, amongst African and the Asian community. Because the reaction of the state at that time, when they saw that potential of us coming together, was not only to step up their harassment, victimization of the most radical activists, they also put out a lot of money in grants. And so you were no longer black anymore, you were Asian, you were this black, you were that black, you were the other black, and it made a big rift within our community, and as a result of that, our community has never really fully recovered from that. And we've never seen the kind of coming together amongst the Asian community. No. We started to analyze our situation. And one of the things we recognized was the increasing differences that was emerging between the African and Asian community. You know, our propaganda, our work, was just really predominantly upon the African community. And so organizations emerged out of that called the African People's Liberation Organization, which in fact still operates today. Small, but it's still around. A year before that, and I'm coming on to the little action points now, just to get you know that we're not just come for too much nostalgia. But, all right, we hear that. Hey, you must have all right, 1998 now. We organized, as a result of all these various different killings, we decided to pull together the various different families called the United Friends and Families Campaign. And since then, apart from supporting individual families whose loved one has been killed in many different levels, which I don't have time to go into, but we're always at the end of October, the last Saturday of October, we have an annual remembrance procession in which we call upon our community to support. And I want to remind you that on the last, I've given out a few flyers, I'll just tell you anyway. On the last Saturday of October, we'll be meeting at Trafalgar Square and we'll be marching to Downing Street. We want all of you to hear, and not just if all of you come, it's not going to be impressive. We want you to contact your network, right, to make sure that you get support to that. You can check me a little bit further on that. I'm also involved in a campaign called the London Campaign Against Police and State Violence, because we don't want to wait until our people get killed. And so the everyday harassment of our people on the street, of our young youths, and particularly around stop and search, supporting them when they get arrested, we involve in a local campaign which involves everybody. So don't worry about that. You don't can't join the African People's Liberation Organization. There's organizations there for you to join. So the London Campaign Against Police and State Violence. And I want to also just end with another organization in which I'm involved, which is the Global African Congress. We believe our struggle, if it means anything, is a global one, it's international, and we need to develop not just our support here, but our support globally. And we'll be having a conference tomorrow around reparation, supported by the RMT, which is going to be in Bernie Grant Center, 11 to 11 in the night, to 10 in the night. And we're going to feed them up, and we're going to have a little social at the end. And I end with this, brothers and sisters, by just simply saying that, you know, one of the reasons why we're in the state that we're in now is that many of us who know that we're up against a parasitical, vicious system don't do enough to stand up against it. And the more we don't stand up against it, the more vicious it becomes. So all of us here has got a duty to support the struggle which is ongoing. And on that point, I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Brother Minkah Odofo, and thank you for the African People's Liberation Organization for supporting the Malcolm X protest. Brother Tongagara, again, if you're an activist in London, there's no way you haven't seen Tongagara at so many pickets and protests, full of so much revolutionary funk and enthusiasm. And Brother Tongagara was also one of the founding members of the Black Unity Freedom Party. So I'm going to ask him to say a few words, but before I do, just to give you a schedule of the time, right? So if Tongagara, if you don't mind saying just a few minutes of words, if that's okay, then we're going to have Sister Dominique and then Brother Eddie. Now, I would like, if that's okay, sir, for you to finish off your contribution by around 7:30, 7:40, if possible. And then we can have nearly an hour or around an hour for Q&A, because it's important that you kind of share your questions and comments and constructive criticisms, etc. So that's the time scale. Then from 8:30 to 9 p.m, it's an opportunity for you to get your signed magazines and books from Eddie and Dominique and Tongagara and Minkah as well. What a beautiful book to be signed by all these four comrades. That's something to really value in life. So please welcome Brother Tongagara, who's our stalwart comrade.
Thank you, Brother Khan. Brothers and sisters, comrades, friends, warmest greetings to you. I'm not sure, I will not know where Brother Minkah started, but it maybe is a hard act to follow. But I will try and give you a sort of brief synopsis of the Black Unity and Freedom Party prior to when the Minkah joined, which was in his youth at the time, in contrast to I, who was much older and then. The Black Unity and Freedom Party came into existence, and indeed when we examine our struggle as a people, and I mean all oppressed people struggling, because whether we like it or not, there's a dynamic, there's an interlink, there's a dialectical relationship between people who are struggling in one country and people who are struggling in another. Irrespective of whether we like those or not, it's not a matter of whether we like people in Asia or the people in South America. What is important, and that is that we recognize the common struggle of all people against the forces of colonialism, imperialism, and parasitic capitalism. If we pursue our struggle in a narrow context, of saying we are only Africans and we are only concerned about African struggle, then I think that is self-defeating. It will not advance our struggle very far, because our enemy is very powerful. It is the world system that we're up against, not an individual white person, although we must judge everyone on an individual basis, but the system that we're up against, the system, and it incorporates elements from our community to do its dirty work. So it is important that we recognize the commonality of the struggle of oppressed peoples, workers and oppressed peoples throughout the world. Now then, as I said, Brother Minkah has started from which point I don't know, but let me say that the Black Unity and Freedom Party was established in 1970 rather, in North London, and we had delegates from Manchester. By the way, the Black Unity and Freedom Party come out of what was then the UCPA, Universal Colored People's Association. These were radical organizations. Some were radical some people are radical, some people are liberal. Basically, they want to see things done, they want to change things. But changing things is not merely you want to change things. You have to understand the dynamics, you have to understand the motive force that drove society forward. And you have to look at the various contradictions within the society, particularly class contradictions, because our struggle is a class struggle, whether we like it or not. And so there's a struggle between the oppressed and the oppressor. And so the final analysis it is not between the oppressed and the oppressor. But in order to succeed, we need to analyze now our situation with which we find ourselves, to determine who is our friend and who is our enemy, who we can win over, who we can isolate, and who we can attack, which will be the main enemy. So therefore, it is necessary for us to do that analysis in order not to confuse friends with enemies. Because often people confuse enemies with people's skin color. People's skin color has nothing to do with the struggle, in my view. These are part of nature which we cannot do anything about. What we can say is that there are people, certainly because of their skin color, they have elevated to a privileged position within the society. And it is true that the rulers have a particular skin color that led them to dominate the world. But that isn't so far as it goes, because, yeah. So let me say that I wish to say to you, brothers and sisters, that the Black Indian Freedom Party was a revolutionary party. It was a party who has a class analysis, a program of short-term and long-term approach. It forges alliance with different groups. It worked closely with the Asian people, certainly at the outset. And in fact, we have Asians who are members of our party. And so therefore, the Black Indian Party, and then myself and the Indian Party had our contradictions. So the contradiction, we were not able to resolve the contradiction satisfactorily. But nevertheless, the party continues. Brother Minkah and them remain as a youth, and they continue the party, life of the party, until such time as it reaches its climax where they felt it could not pursue any further. But they had to then form something out of the Black Indian Freedom Party. But there were many organizations around, there were many organizations in Britain here from our community. And that going back, Claudia Jones is an important political figure. I just came from a walk tracing where she lives, where she works, and she was one of the reasons why the Black Indian Freedom Party.
And part of that, we should also support one of our vanguard revolutionary fighters in the global struggle, that's Robert Mugabe, who has demanded back the remains of our brothers from that so-called museum as well. So please welcome Dominique Stevenson. Dominique is a wonderful comrade and revolutionary, multifaceted in her work. So please welcome Dominique to the today.
I don't do well with microphones. I'm kind of shy, so I'm going to say a lot, and I'm not always comfortable talking for whatever reason. I do a lot of work in prisons, and I can speak to 100 prisoners at a time and be very comfortable, but when it comes to like a crowd of 10 or 50 people, But anyway, one thing I'd like to say is being here in Brixton, it reminds me a lot of Harlem, New York. The community is very similar in terms of like the diaspora. You know, Harlem, you have people from all over. We also have the gentrification, okay, which I see and have heard about here. So we have a lot of things in common. Much of my work in the U.S. has been working with Eddie. I've worked with Eddie for many years, working in the prison system in Maryland. You know, the United States has the largest, basically largest prison population in the world. The state of Louisiana actually has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. This is one state in the U.S. The state that we live in, Maryland, incarcerates Black folks at probably one of the highest disproportionate rates in the country. And about 50% of the people in U.S. prisons are Black folks, people of African descent. 75% are people of color, and that's largely Latinos, mixed in with Blacks. So it's, that says it all, really, okay? Because also, Black folks commit about 15% of the crime, which is proportionate to our population, which is about 12, 13%, whatever they tell us we are after every census. It keeps getting lower and lower, but it's proportionate. So it's not like Black folks are committing 50% of the crime, but if you look at a city like Baltimore where we live, where we are the majority, of course, you will see that we commit the majority of the crime because we make up the majority. But the media spins that in a very different way. And so even Black folks believe that, we're just doing, we've internalized, some of us have internalized oppression. So some people believe that, okay, we commit crime disproportionately. No, we don't. No, they incarcerate us disproportionately. They arrest us disproportionately. Okay, they kill us disproportionately. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard what happened in Baltimore this spring. I'm definitely not going to call it a riot, and I'm reluctant to call it an uprising, because if there were an uprising, you would see some change, you would see some movement, and I don't see that yet. What I see is our city is really back to normal, which is nothing good, okay? And that what happened is young people decided to push back on that day with the police, but the police also set that situation up. And they went to a place in Baltimore on the day that Freddie Gray, this young man who'd been killed by the police, and there had been protests afterward. The day that he was buried, the police go to a transit stop where there are going to be plenty of young people. They shut down the subways, they shut down the buses, okay? They had already had a history of really harassing the young people there. So on that particular day, these young people pushed back. They fought back. Much of the damage that the media said occurred really didn't occur. There were vehicle fires, and it was also very concentrated. They burnt police vehicles. I wish they would burn more. Okay, to tell you frank. And if I was out there that day with a big lighter, I think I might have helped. So that, a CVS drugstore in the neighborhood, a store that probably is overcharging people. There are, in that particular community, which is really not very far from where we live, there aren't very many stores. Okay, so the stores that they burnt are stores that in some cases probably had a history of overcharging people, but there wasn't that much property damage, truth of the matter. That community, the property damage that occurred there 20, 30, 40 years ago, okay? When you had this shift, you had what they call in the US, and they probably call it the same thing here, urban renewal. Better known as what we used to say, Negro removal, okay? So you had that happen in that particular area. Left a lot of housing in very bad condition. Also, a lot of middle-class Black folks have moved out of those communities. We lived in these communities because we were forced to live in segregation for so many years. When segregation supposedly ended, Black people moved out, and if you look at Maryland, you'll find that they've been resegregated in middle-class communities, okay? But they were out of, say, the hood. So that community has been suffering for 40 years. It looks like, I tell people this all the time, it looks like New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. We have not had a hurricane, the conditions in the community have been that way. And so for the media to come in and in some ways project it as if some of this was damage done by a riot is an absolute lie. It's damage done by capitalism, okay? So, those are the things that I kind of want to share, just being from Baltimore and this having happened. But also working in the prison system in Maryland and seeing so many of our young folks coming right out of the city and coming literally out of school and going into the prison system is a heartbreak. especially because they're coming out of schools that just are not really educating, schools that are pretty much designed for that purpose of moving them from one institution literally to another institution. You know, we've worked, I guess I've done prison work for almost, not quite 2 decades, but a decade and a half. In that time, I've had the opportunity to work with some of those young men coming back into the community. And that's still challenging because there are no jobs. You know, the jobs that exist in Baltimore are not enough for people to live. Right now, a living wage would probably be $17 or $18 per hour, all right? Generally, they're far below that. So even at $10 an hour, which to like me in the 90s, that sounded like a lot of money. It's not enough. And so a lot of times people are forced right back into the drug game. You know, and it is a game because it's a setup, mostly, you know, for people of color in the US. And so there's very little economic development other than at the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, which is the big tourist spot. It's on the water, dirty, polluted water, but water nonetheless. The hotels, stadium, that kind of stuff. Those are, you know, the jobs that exist there are cooking in those, you know, in the restaurants, busting tables, working in hotels. You know, jobs that are still not going to allow people to really rise out of poverty. You know, so it's just, it's like a treadmill, you know. The one thing that I do see in the US right now is that there is something afoot. Young people are trying to find their way. They are pushing back. There is, I can't say it's a cohesive movement because I think there are so many different segments involved in that movement. And they look a lot at the Panthers. A lot of them look at that particular period in history, but I think one of the real things that they're going to have to look at and learn is that, one, that many of them, the Panthers, were internationalists in their perspective. And that a lot of times, because we have lived in isolation in our communities, we have a very US-centric view of things, and that there's struggle going on all around the world. Okay, but CNN is not going to show that. The local news is not going to give them that. And it's funny, in this period of globalization, we get no information. Okay, when I grew up in the 70s, you saw Vietnam. You know, you saw that on the news. TV isn't great, but it was more informative during that period. And so one of the things I think that they really have to learn and look at is that there are other struggles going on, that we have to work in solidarity. The government has done a job on us. They have managed to break up the solidarity that people were attempting to develop in the 60s. It's to the point where, you know, you distrust people within your own race in terms of the struggle. So we have to get past that, but we also have to break down those barriers that kind of keep us separated and keep us in our own little groups.
I don't have a lot of time, so I'm only going to take a few minutes because I would rather for us to do, I know, stop me, okay? I would rather for us to have questions and answers. That way I can kind of like answer the things that you have an interest in. But I do want to share a little bit. One of the legacies of the Black Panther Party was its survival programs. And there's been a lot of discussion throughout the decades about whether or not that was a revolutionary or reformist kind of program. When Huey Newton kind of defined it, basically he said it was a reformist program designed to support the black and poor communities pending revolution. And that was like almost 50 years ago. And during the interim, the program was disrupted and disbanded. And when I got out of prison last year and looked around, I could see a need for a survival program in the black community. Baltimore City had went back in time to the 30s. And this was in 2014 when I got out. The city looked like a war zone in various areas. So actually we started immediately as Dominique was already working in the community that Freddie Gray got killed in. When I got out, I joined her and some young comrades that had came through the program and that was doing survival programs in the community, and we have intensified that work and that effort with creative farms, etc. But so there's a need right now for survival programs, but what's more important is that Huey was saying, because of automation and cybernation, that a large percentage of the population would be put out of work. And he was saying, he was talking about robots and computers. And when you look at the automobile factories that they're building, the new factories they're building, just one example, and most of you are familiar with the iPhones, iPads, the Apple computers, etc. They're built in China. And under the direction and guidance of Steve Jobs, he actually decided that robots could do a better job than the Chinese workforce. At that time that he was still alive a few years ago, there was 1 million Chinese building these iPhones, iPads, and computers, Apple computers, etc. And the conditions were so horrendous in the factories, I think it was Foxconn or something, somebody know the right name for it. The conditions were so bad, the Chinese were going up on the roof, and they were jumping off the roof and committing suicide. And they was doing this at an enormous and alarming rate, and the Chinese government didn't know what to do about it. So they first started locking the doors. People that wanted to commit suicide found out how to jimmy the doors, and they still went up there. It continued to happen. Finally, they went up on the roof and they put huge fences up on the roof. But they still found a way to do it. So finally, Steve Jobs said, well, we're going to build another factory and we're going to automate and cybernate it. And so they built a factory with 13,000 robots. And they let that factory work. This is about 2 years before he died. They let that factory work. And they started generating the iPhones that we have, the pads, the computers, and other technology, high forms of computers, mini computers, supercomputers, etc. And he determined about a year before he died that this factory was more efficient and effective than the Chinese workforce, and he ordered 130,000 more robots to go in factories to replace the Chinese workforce of 1 million people. Now, that's one, and of course they are actually installing those now. He died maybe a year or so ago. They're actually installing that right now. That's one multinational corporation. The automobile industry has been doing the same thing. Right in Baltimore, say for instance, when I got locked up in 1970, they had an auto plant there, and it had 5,000 people in it. 4,000 of them were blue-collar workers from the black and poor communities. That's where we had our jobs at. When I got out, they had automated this factory, and there's robots that's making the cars. Welding machines come down, welding arms come down, courier things come down, put the motors in, etc. And in that plant is about 500 people with computers, computer control, remote control systems, jackets, pocket protectors, etc. They're technocrats. It's 10% of the workforce. So 4,500 workers have disappeared out of that system. but they're turning out twice as many cars. That's gonna lead to not only massive unemployment, but it's gonna lead to a problem, a real crisis in the system going forward. Because who's buying those cars? And I was mentioning it the other night. Billionaires can only buy so many cars. After you get 400 cars, what are you gonna do? You got a car in every city. Then what? We're not buying the cars because we're increasingly unemployed. In one of the areas in our community in Baltimore, it's called Cherry Hill. It's 10,000 people. 50% of the people in that area is unemployed today. So we're heading for a crisis, and the crisis is gonna go one or two ways. Either we're gonna have a big brother-like society that's gonna be feeding us on the dole and starving us to death and locking us up and killing us on the street, or all that's happening already, right? But it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse because in the United States of America itself, even as they are giving food stamps out, even as they're feeding that unemployed proportion of the population, which is over 50 million people now, in a nation with 300 million, 300 plus, 330, something like that. 50 million people already are in that predicament, and those numbers are increasing. So there's cameras everywhere, there's militarization everywhere, there's jaywalking, people get locked up, you make a turn without your signal on, Sister Sandra Brown gets killed. The least little thing that happens is subject you to either be in prison or killed. You know, you sold a loose cigarette without having a peddler's license, and you get choked out and you can't breathe. So that's been going on in America in an intensified way. So we got a choice that can continue to go on because the economic system is going to demand that they maintain control over an increasingly impoverished, hostile, growing population. Or we can start organizing, and we can start gaining control on a community level of our communities, and we can start fighting back. We can start forming the kind of organizations that these brothers here has been working toward, and we can develop a new world. And the one thing that I've noticed, and I'm going to stop in 2 minutes, is that young people across America, and not just across America, because I recently had the opportunity to be in Venezuela, young people across the planet, in Africa, in Asia, here in Europe, because you can look at Greece, you can look at Spain, you can look at other people, you know this is happening in South America, and in North America, in the United States of America, in Canada, the Inuits, etc. They are gathering their energy again, they're starting to question this system, the same way we questioned it in the early 60s, and eventually it grew into Black liberation movement, it grew into an anti-war movement, it grew into a counterculture movement, it grew into a movement that caused the government to react negatively. They are now at that point where they're starting to look and question and say, what can we do about this? And they're asking questions all the time. Well, what was the mistakes? What was the good points? What can we take from this? And they are already learning. Just 2-3 weeks ago, I was in Cleveland with like 1,000 young Black Lives Matter movement people. And they were from all over the country. And they came there together in Cleveland to determine how they can find a way forward. And they're looking at the struggle nationally and internationally. And even though they're circling their writings about being Black, they are aligning themselves with whites, with gays, with immigrants, with old people, with people that's concerned about the environment, etc. So what I'm not going to do here is have him come up and get me. So I'm going to sit down, and if you got questions, then I'm going to answer them, if I can.
I'll just open up for the Q&A. Just wanted to kind of point your attention to the event poster. And we in the Malcolm X movement put a lot of thinking into our event posters. And this one in particular, because it's about Black and Asian resistance, this event, and speakers have referenced that from the podium. There's just a few people. There's Yuri Kachiyama, who was a comrade of Malcolm X's, who was Japanese heritage on the poster as well, in terms of the East Asian connection of our global struggle. And also, this poster is designed by brother Mohammed Hamza from Intifada Street, who is also part of the Malcolm X movement. And if you don't know about Intifada Street, please do check it out. He's really taken some of the best inspiration from Emory Douglas's example of the graphic art revolutionary contribution. But there's also an Asian man peering through the right ear side of Eddie. It happens to be Eddie when he was younger, around circa 1970. This Asian man was the actual partner and comrade of Claudia Jones. His name is Manchanda. He has been airbrushed out of history. So you'll know about Tariq Ali, but you won't know about Manchanda, who led the anti-war movement here against the Vietnam War, who led the demonstration to Grosvenor Square and battled with the police that day. But you know about Tariq Ali, who took the protest for a picnic in Hyde Park. With all due respect to Tariq Ali, Manchanda is one of the political godfathers, you can say, with all his faults and limitations, of radical Black and Asian politics in this country. And so we are intending to raise Manchanda to the position that he deserves. He does not deserve to be airbrushed out history. And I know all the veteran activists in London here in the room will know about Manchanda and his role, so we want to popularize that as well. Just wanted to draw your attention to that. So now I'm going to open up to Q&A. Feel free to ask questions, criticisms, contributions. I don't mind having long people speak, but obviously you know people start to get annoyed if you go on too long, right? So gauge the feeling in the room. So we have one sister here, and then one brother there. So please, sister, I'll take 3 at a time, if that's okay.
Okay, if I can remember. All right, go ahead.
Your memory is good. You told me off the other night.
All right.
I'm trying to remind you.
Go ahead.
Please, sister, yeah. So I'll bring the mic to you. Sorry, if you could use the mic, that'd be great. And anyone who doesn't want to be on camera, just let me know and we'll edit your face out.
Don't be embarrassed to say this.
Thank you for a great presentation, comrade. The Zionist control media has been saying that the movement in Ferguson is being funded by George Soros, and that he's also funding Clinton's campaign, and that this is the reason why the so-called movement hasn't been able to confront Clinton about racism, mass incarceration, blah, blah. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that is correct, but there's the movement, like any movement, there's various levels. There is a movement in Ferguson that's being funded by funders, grant people, George Soros, etc. You might call them the talking heads that we find all the time. Back during the day, it was like model cities. On the ground, there's a grassroots movement for angry Black men and women that don't get the camera attention, that don't get the opportunity to confront Clinton. That movement is a grassroots movement. It's alive and well, but it's not getting publicity. The movement that gets the publicity is the one that has the grants, that has the offices, that has the PhDs or the master's degrees behind their name. You know, and that's something that they have been doing all over the country. That's what they did in Baltimore with this recent incident. They used those people to misdirect the anger and hostility and frustration of the people on the ground. So just be aware, under the surface, behind that you see on TV, is some frustrated people. Yeah.
It's also, funding has also been a way to undermine movement. Those foundations have been set up historically to do just that. They looked at what happened in the 60s and they said, we're going to control this. So we'll dole out money over here. That person will get mad over there because they're struggling. So it's just another way that they're trying to undermine it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't let you get your three in, right?
Turning the mic on helps sometimes. Sorry, it was the sister here, please.
Okay. I want to ask the panel a question about using the term black. Personally, I think it was a mistake for us to identify the movement as black people. I think we should have used the term African. I find the term black very polarizing, in a sense conforming to white supremacy notion of race. White people on the top and black people on the bottom, and all other ethnic groups in the middle, whom are all referred to in terms of their ethnicity, not in terms of their skin colour. Asking the panel a question, do you think it was a mistake to use the term black to identify ourselves?
Thank you, sister. Great question. Before we'll take another one. Brother Glenn Roy, and I'd like to welcome Brother Glenn Roy, who's another stalwart activist and revolutionary in London.
Greetings, everyone. I'm not sure this was such a good idea to take me after the sister, because I mean, I'm going to have to comment on what you've said, and my question is going to take us in another direction. But just to say, for me, and perhaps it's my age, for me, the term black is a political terminology. I'm an African, and there are alliances when we have African and Asian alliance and so on. So the term is one that is about a political initiative. That's how I see that. I don't see it as identifying Africans. Americans have that problem because they call Africans black and so there's that issue. Can I say, my sister, I didn't hear any humming and ahhing, so you know, you did very well. So please feel the strength. The question I'm going to ask, as I said, I'll take it a little out of the direction. I mean, you know, the state has an agenda of assassination and moving our people out by any means. You know, they have that agenda about any means necessary. During the liberation struggle in the continent, a lot of the assassination were very behind the scene. They never used to admit it. Then when they started killing people like Saddam Hussein and so on, it just became a public spectre. I mean, what happened in Libya was clearly, you know, undoubtedly sponsored by them and so on. And then we had the Bin Laden thing. And then they wouldn't even admit whether you know, where was the body, took it out to sea. I mean, you know, what was that about? I just really wondered if can we believe all the assassination is true, or is the state, especially the US, doing things such as capturing people and endlessly torturing them? I'm just putting that out there because it seems something, they've moved away from secret assassination, public assassination, now they've gone to somewhere new, and I'm just sort of curious about that. I do that because I know everybody else is going to stick to the subject matter of the party and its history, and I want to hear that, but I want to get that in. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So,
Okay, but I want to let Dominique answer that first question about black and African, because she's a stickler for that. But I have an answer too.
Dominique, if I could just thank you, Brother Glenroy. You know, you're all really our gratitude for everyone attending today, but there's a few other individuals I'd just like you to welcome to the event that I think is important, just to pick out. This Brother Omawale for the Pan-African Community Society Forum. Thank you so much for being here. And there's also, thank you, there's also Comrade Sebla from the Eritrean community who's also here. And Eritrea is a small but proud and independent country in East Africa, and it's currently under imperialist attack, including by the British government. The Malcolm X movement is partnering up with Comrade Sebla and other Eritrean brothers and sisters at an event at Shepherd's Bush Theatre on the 5th of September, and the Claudia Jones event is on the 12th of September at the BCA, not the 5th. It's the Eritrea event is on the 5th of September at Bush Theatre. Excuse me, sorry, Dominic.
Yeah, it's funny because we were just talking about that very question that you raised. I've always had a problem with the term African American. I have a problem with anything with American in it. My ancestors, some of them were already there, and some of them were forcibly brought there. I generally refer to myself as a person of African descent. But I do think, I agree with the brother that black has a political context. I think that what we were talking about is the fact that for Africans who I believe were the original people, I believe that that's where life began. Okay, well, nobody needed to refer to each other as black. And so it's problematic in the sense of it is derived from white supremacy. But for us in the US, it does have like a strong political context, black power. And I think that that's not just in the US, but that's the only experience I can really speak from.
The whole city, the whole nation of Carthage is erased from the planet. That's what they want to do, that's what they do, and we just have to keep increasing our numbers and keep challenging them everywhere we can, because they're always going to make they don't want to see us, but we're here.
Sorry, Minkah.
Yeah, just following on from the brother point in regards to the Glenroy issue, and it's quite interesting when, you know, we've had all of this furor around Barack Obama, and I'm no friend of George Bush, not at all. But he seems to have had a policy of wanting to locking up people in Guantanamo Bay indefinitely. And as my brother here, Eddie, has made a point, he shifted with Obama. It's just open assassination. Open, don't bother lock them up, just assassinate them. So, you know, so these are the kind of issues for we to be looking at when we start to glorify an individual like that sellout. Well, I won't say he was a sellout because I don't think he was ever in. He's just a traitor. I don't even know if he's a traitor because he was never with us. But you know, he's just black power, he's just white power with a black face. Let me just say that. In regards to the position of black, you know, I used to get so fed up at these debates. I used to go to all these places, are we black, are we African, are we black? And all the time, we don't do nothing. People would be just happy with having these debates. Are we black or are we Africans? Now, it seems to me that, you know, there is a history to our definition. You know, we've gone through when we were Negro. The Right Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey organized the greatest mobilization of black people on this planet, over 11 million people, and he called himself Negro. Are we going to say, well, Marcus, you shouldn't have called your people Negro? We're African, and he also mentioned African Communities League. The point is the struggle and the context of that struggle. And we've gone through many names. We've gone through the colored, we've gone through the Negro, we've gone through the colored, we've gone through the black. But the most important thing is who is doing the defining. And so when the Black Power movement came up and said, say it loud, we're black and we're proud, we started to define what we meant by black. Okay? Yes, we are African people. But what I personally, if somebody feels uncomfortable with that, that's up to them. My main issue is that we've come in together to carry forward a struggle. We can have that debate, but I don't think that we should get too caught up with it. People will catch up with that. One of the leading organizations on the motherland, the Black Consciousness Movement led by Steve Biko, they knew that they were African. But sometimes you gotta look, where are the people? People make struggle. And sometimes you can come to the people with all kinds of concept which has no resonance with the people. And at the same time you end up talking to yourself and have all of these nice debates which are good, but it don't necessarily take us very far. So we're African people. I have no problems about that. We're African people first and foremost, and identity is important. But I don't talk about mistakes. We're going on a journey, and that journey is liberation. And if you look at the reality, there's more and more of our people acknowledging that reality. And the more they get involved with struggle, the more that will become real. The more you just have these kind of isolated debates outside of struggle, then you can have that forever. So I hear what you're saying about us being African, but don't forget context when you use these terms, because it's very, very important in terms of taking our struggle forward. And that's always the main thing, struggle and resistance. Identity will come, it will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Minkah. Sister, would you like a right to reply? Could you take the mic if that's okay?
I don't actually disagree with you. The reason why I brought the question up, we've been having this debate in various black community groups on Facebook, so that was the reason why I asked the question, okay?
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, sister. Also, I know the brother and I have had a lot of differences, and our relationship remains contentious, but I would also like everyone to welcome Hamja Asan into the room, because what happened to your family, particularly your brother, was an injustice, and what you've done is some fantastic campaigning work for your brother and those issues. So welcome, Brother Hamja. Brother Fidel, you want to take the mic?
The middle means, but there we go. If I can quickly comment on the last thing Brother Conway said about Obama and Guantanamo Bay, that's what came to my head. I think when Obama came to power, he was talking about closing down Guantanamo, so he got his close Guantanamo, so he tells his people, let's close Guantanamo, we can't close Guantanamo until we end the war. So let's go end the war. How can you end the war? By killing all the people trying to imprison. So that's how I saw that. But also we have to recognise, especially what's going on here and in the US with Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders, two kind of socialist left-leaning guys, who have been kind of promising. We have to recognise the limitations that the system provides in itself, that the structure that we're fighting against. Any kind of hopeful candidate involved in that structure is going to face limitations that we don't really want to face, so we want to get rid of that whole structure, really. I guess what I want to talk about is, like, from your point of view, when you kind of started, was there a lot of brothers in the Black Panthers who were on road, killing each other, doing gangsterism on the streets? Was that really happening? It wasn't really happening at the beginning of that time. Yeah, but I think, well, me and Sister Tenwani, we work with young gang members, people involved in gangs and people who are identified by the broad brush term of gangs. Now, I see that the struggle is important for those people because it gives them a cause. For me, I see a reason for them to not kill each other. But do you ever see that within your knowledge of the Panthers? Do you see anything where people who weren't as awake before used the knowledge that they got in the struggle itself to kind of elevate themselves out of their situation and out of their destructive mindsets?
Thanks, brother. We're going to take one or two more, that's okay. Brother Ibrahim, also please welcome Brother Ibrahim Sincere. He's a leading young activist out of ours in London and also does some beautiful revolutionary art. A piece that you put up yesterday was very beautiful. Please, brother.
Thank you, Bob Masakan. First of all, peace to yourselves, salam to yourselves and to everyone here. I want to thank you for your contributions. Should I speak louder? Yeah, peace to yourselves. I want to thank you for your contributions. I think that, especially as young people, we always need to learn from the elders and from their experience and from their wisdom. I want to say that, over the last couple of decades, 2 or 3 decades, I think we've all witnessed and we can all see that the method that the oppressors have taken is evolving. It's not different, it's just evolving, and the method that the oppressed are taking is also evolving and is also changing. Brother Minkah, you mentioned that there is an increasing amount of people who are becoming involved in the liberation struggle. But what I wanted to ask, it's an open question to the panel, and I guess to whoever else wants to contribute. Over the past 2 or 3 decades, however long you whatever time frame you want to attach to it, have you seen progression in the liberation struggle or regression, and why? Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, brother. Good question. One more contribution, Brother Hamza, please, if you could, Brother Adam, if you could, also please a round of applause, Brother Adam is also a well-known good activist of ours here, and NUS Black students as well. Brother Hamza, please.
So a couple of years ago we saw an enormous hunger strike in California of 30,000 people, and we also see a lot of litigation. Eddie Conway was part of the ACLU prison organising. I just thought, what do you see the balance of litigation and law and also social movements and how they work together, and what's more important? Thank you.
Okay, I guess the first thing is initially there were street organizations or gangs as you call them. They actually gravitated toward the Black Panther Party. The Blackstone Rangers started actually organizing and imitating the Black Panther Party up in Illinois, in Chicago. Some of our leading members came from street organizations, gangs, in LA, Bunchy, Carter, Geronimo, etc. So a number of those, the Crips, the Bloods, and even the Black Guerrilla family started up in the prison system under George Jackson. So they started off very positively. COINTELPRO ultimately used them, flipped them, turned them, took the positive elements out and put negative elements in and created a drug culture as they offshored most of the industry and people had to find a way to live. They now are using those street organizations in the United States of America for low intensity warfare in our community. We're fighting each other. But even in all of those organizations, and they're spread all across the nation now, there's good elements and bad elements, if I could use those terminologies. There's elements in those organizations that want to organize and protect and defend and mobilize the community to liberate itself. And there's elements in those organizations that want to accumulate massive wealth and become Rockefeller, right? So we've learned from that, and we work with some of those brothers, and some of them work right down in the community with us now. And I guess the bottom line of this is that a lot of the ones that want to be Rockefellers realize that they're not making enough money. They're making $500 or $600. I don't know, in pounds, that's probably 350 pounds or something here a week. And they're not making enough money even to repair their cars. And they risk being shot in the head, they risk going to jail, and they risk committing murder, and they want to get out. In fact, they be dragging on us, talking about, get us a job, get us out of here. So that's on the street, you know, and so there's hope for change in that area, and so continue to work in that area, right? Okay, the other question was, okay, well, no, let me get him first over there about it looked very bad. I sat in the prison and over the last 3 decades, and I watched the struggles around the world. I watched what's known to political people as entrenchment, that the capitalists, the multinational corporations push back everywhere, undermined and subverted governments all across the world. Obama came in fact, and helped to recolonize Africa. That's why he came in, because Bush couldn't do it. So they needed a black face to justify killing Gaddafi, because Bush never would have got away with that, right? But there's silence around the black face running the empire, right? But what I've seen just before I got out, maybe a year or so, I watched the bubbling up of movements across America, the bubbling up of movements in Spain, in Greece, in other places. I watched, obviously, Venezuela. I watched people, young people, coming to terms with the conditions that they face. They didn't have jobs. There's a new thing. Even that Arab Spring, which was misdirected and misled, it was still young people that was frustrated, angry, mad, and wanted a better future. And that caliber in China, even in China, and I love China, that caliber of people is all over the planet now, and they're starting to stand up. So I actually have high hopes that the desert that we came to for the last 30 years, there's an oasis out there and there's an ocean beyond that. You know, that's my take right now. Yeah, you wanna?
I just wanted to speak to that too before he moved on. I think growing up in the 70s and the 80s, being like in my teens and early 20s, I think that people don't often look back at that time and see how like heavy-handed Ronald Reagan was in the United States. Like, people in my generation were hard hit, and I don't think that we were ever able to get up and stand up on our feet and mobilize the way that young people can now. I think though that we are right now dealing with a very bold form of fascism, whereas in the US in the past it used to be much more sneaky and subtle. It was fascism, it was just different. And we're also suffering from the reforms that come before it, generally, that kind of mean-hearted, cold-blooded fascism. And so I think that young people right now have no choice, but my generation in the United States was hard hit by crack and AIDS and HIV. Those things, particularly for people of color or black folks in the US, those things had a lot of impact. A lot of these young people have grown up in the shadow of that, and I think that my generation was very fatalistic and we passed that on. But these folks their back is against the wall in a different kind of way, and I think that they're not willing to just die, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to the state of our movement, in regards to our people coming together, I mean, I want to acknowledge another two people in this room here today, which is Brother Fidel and Brother Timmy, who I was contacted by and so impressed, as I would particularly mention to Dominique, as he raised the point about our awareness in this country in terms of their response through their organizing effort to give solidarity to the brothers and sisters being killed in America and in solidarity with the uprising which were taking place. And the mobilization which that they've done has been fantastic, not just in regards to the American Embassy, where there's been regular protests down there. Also the Westfield Shopping Center, in which was virtually closed down as a result of young people taking actions. And I think when you've been around, as for the little years that I've been around, I would say it's like we're going through kind of a transition at the moment, and one of the reasons why people get so demoralized is the fact that they're looking at reality and the life generally through the eyes of our oppressors, which generally control the media, and they don't look at the undercurrent. And the undercurrent is very clear to me when I talk about imperialism, that it isn't a very, very serious crisis. And people have been saying this for a long time, but if we look concretely in terms of even struggles amongst imperialist powers themselves, in fact, about them trying to corner and push back people like Russia, countries like Russia, supposed to be their allies. We look at them invading Afghanistan. We see them invading Iraq. As a result of their invasion, what do we see? Even more crisis on their hands. Having a so-called, they've created their own terrorist organization, Al-Qaeda, now morphing into ISIS, that they can't even control, although they're obviously still backing them. You know, different factions of the ruling class having their own different interests. We know they want to crush Venezuela, they ain't been able to do that. We know they want to crush Cuba. They haven't been able to do that. Compromise have had to be made. Barack Obama stood up the other day and he said, look, we've had to make a deal with Iran. Because if we don't make a deal, we're going to have to go to war with them. That's a recognition that there's a force there which is saying, we ain't backing down with you. Okay? So these are the issues, these are the kind of struggles, and in particularly when we talk about young people, all of these killings in America, they've been happening for a long time. But now we see this rising up. It's a transition now, because now people are kind of grappling with the same kinds of ideas. Well, what are the correct kind of ideas? And within that, you're going to have all kinds of confusion. You're going to have all kinds of people fighting each other. I think who know about that, know, brothers and sisters. But that dust will settle. That dust will settle. And the bottom line is that this system ain't getting any stronger. It's vicious. But that's a sign, really, of its weakness. And we've got to recognize, it seems to me, that strength within that resistance. Because I'm impressed with our young people, and I know they haven't formed no party overnight. But the fact that they can respond the way in which that they be in this country. And this is a question for Dominic. I wanted to come back onto you on this, because we're a small island, Britain. And we had an uprising over here under Duggan, in which was an uprising that basically, you know, had a massive sort of impact, and particularly with our young people over here as a result of the police murdering a young man, Mark Duggan. And I've mentioned that what we've had solidarity with the actions in America. Was there any, I know that you've mentioned the censorship of the media, but did any of this ever leak out over there in terms of maybe what's happening over here, and even the talk of a possible solidarity action with us over here? Who is that?
It never makes it to the mainstream media. I think that you have people, because they're conscious and they're kind of watching what's going on, people are sometimes aware of what's happening. But really, right now, I mean, we are in the midst of, and it's been this way for probably 20 years, of just really ridiculous, you know, control of the media. So I'm gonna let Eddie tackle with it, but I don't want to speak for everybody in the US, obviously, but we get very little information. I know that the men that I work with the prison, the men that I work with, many of them have access to RTV, BBC, and actually, I'm not praising the BBC, but it gives us more information than US media. But they watch RT, so they're getting stuff on TV in the prison sometimes that people in the community aren't necessarily watching. Then we're inundated with reality TV. We're inundated with a lot of stupidity. So that, and then, you know, you add to that technology and how everything is instantaneous, that people are just being dumbed down.
Thank you, sister. Now, you guys have been brilliant. It's a bit of a hot and bothering day. I can feel, maybe it's just me, but I can feel slightly a bit of lag in the room. I might be wrong, and you might be up for pumping through to 9:15. But what I'm going to suggest is this, that we take just whoever wants to make a contribution from the floor, and then we'll ask Eddie to sum up and to close the meeting, if that's okay, because we're at 8:15 now. We want to finish at 8:30, because I want you guys at least half an hour to talk to Brother Tongagara, Sister Dominique, Comrade Eddie, and Comrade Minkah, and others in the room as well. So I'm going to take just a whole batch of people, and if I may know where the roving mic is, does Brother Adam have that? Brother Adam, you indicated to me you wanted to mention something, so perhaps you would like to start. Just before you do, just a very short comment, me abusing my position as chair. I think Brother Minkah is absolutely correct that we need to see it reciprocated, solidarity. That solidarity is indivisible. We need to develop that. Actually, I think that's a quote from Bobby Seale or someone from the Panthers, that solidarity is indivisible. Sorry, what's that? Sorry. And the point is they're constantly trying to Eurocentricize us, constantly. So for the black radicals in the United States, they're hardly looking on beyond, but that's changing. So here, we're hardly looking beyond this pathetic little windswept island off the corner of northwest Europe. And we rightly commemorate and we protest and sometimes rise up for brothers like Mark Duggan. But the drum I continue to bang is this. On August the 8th, the British Air Force, this is August the 8th, 2011, I know Brother Glenroy and Minkah, we were there outside the US Embassy. On August the 8th in 2011, the British directly killed 85 civilians in a town in northern Libya called Zlatan. And there is no mention of it, no justice campaign 4 years on to this day. Not to mention the only dark-skinned town in North Africa, which was Tawarga in Libya, 35,000 people, no longer exists. Because these people have been systematically persecuted in Libya since the NATO operation there in 2011. So we must go beyond that is what is defined by our enemy in which we operate. And we have to reach out to all the victims of the British state, of the French state, and the Yankee state across the world. Brother Adam, please.
My sort of comment was what Brother Minkah was just saying right now about solidarity between sort of US and UK sort of activists. I was fortunate enough to have been involved in the Black Lives Matter tour here in the UK when Patrice Cullors and some others came over from the States to talk about sort of the experiences that they've had over in the States. And as a follow-up to that, some of the families from the Friends of Family campaign are actually going over to the States this year, and one of the people who's going to be going over there, is Sister Marsha Rigg, relative of Sean Rigg, obviously. And so there is sort of solidarity between UK and US activists who are campaigning on police in custody, police brutality, and so on and so forth. And it's, I guess, in the early embryonic stages of it, connection between families and communities organising against the state and police brutality. And I guess we'll see more and more from this. I'm sure information will be sort of released.
Thanks for that. We've got two here. Please, the sister with the sunglasses first. Round of applause, please, for Brother Adam as well. It's important.
Hi, yes. There's been a lot of talk of about solidarity, obviously, and this event as well as being on the poster of black and brown people. I'm obviously of South Asian descent, and within my own community, I experienced a lot of intense anti-blackness that exists within South Asian communities. It's disgusting, it's rife, and it's a really big problem and potentially a huge, well, it is a huge barrier to this genuine, authentic solidarity, and I don't think that people talk about it enough. I guess my question is, well, firstly to just air that, because I don't think it's spoken about enough in these contexts. Just to ask you what your experience, if anything, has been of perhaps challenges in that regard, or any positive examples of how that solidarity can be built, or I guess, like, we're trying in our small ways to challenge that from within our communities, but it's just a massive task ahead, so any kind of, comments would be great.
Great, thank you, Sister. Comrade Sebler, if you could, Brother Adam, just hand the mic over. It's on, I think.
First of all, I'd like to applaud Marshal Eddie Conway for the suffering that he has endured over all these years. Really, really impressive and humiliating for me. I'd just like to say that the problems that we black people are suffering in different parts of the world, they come in different packaging, but we are all suffering. There is no doubt about that. We've been hearing about how the experiences are in the United States, and then here in Europe, the Europeans have had the benefits, shall we say, quote unquote, of having had the experience of colonizing, and so direct work with the African people, be the British, the French, the Germans, and even the Italians. Those ties, they call them ties, still run today, and they are just operating by remote control Whereas in the past they came over there. Right now, they have it easier to control us. Now, these recent years, it's about migration, and migration is the issue right now. Oh, we're being marauded, and the words that are coming are just frightening. Well, people that don't know about the backgrounds and why these things are happening, it is frightening, one can say. I say, you've made your bed, you now lie on it.
Thank you, sister. Anyone else? Can we take the brother here with the burial? Remind me your name, sorry, brother.
It's right, Selwyn.
So, and then we have the brother back there with...
Very interesting to see so many faces around here, and it's beautiful to see that everyone's galvanized with a common cause. I mean, like, when you live a certain life and you've seen so many souls pass, and they don't have to pass, and for other reasons, Sean Reed was my friend. I'm the one who mentioned a full inquiry at the CPCG meeting in regards to his death. But prior to that, my Asian friend died when I graduated from university under whatever suspicious circumstances. You have a duty to yourselves. I'm looking at all of you, because you can go home and something changes. And then you have to, even if you're activist or not, you have to be proactive in how you now have to move forward and deal with that situation. If you don't deal with that situation, it becomes internal, right? And it becomes a problem to you. I mean, when my friend Asha died, there was many of us, Greek, Jamaican, Indian, Asian, but the fact that he died in such a way, right? And he was a beautiful spirit, and we didn't have any recourse for what happened after that. It meant that we had to act. The case almost went to court. We were stopped, and then it turned into court cases in my final year of uni. But what subsequently happened, he all of a sudden died, and his situation was, and this is the thing, it's not just about black people, it's about people. If you've got a common cause to make a change, make a change. Because it got to a stage where you talk about riot, there was a countdown happening in my brain. And when that got to 1, that was going to be whatever happened. And it wasn't about black people, it was about the person that we knew, and we wanted justice. So, all of you, when you go away from here, remember the importance of you being here, but also making a contribution to do what's right for the future generations of sport.
So I've seen you several times before on events, and I don't know your name, so forgive me.
That's cool. My name's Kwesi. Much respect to Eddie Conway, brother at the front, everybody on the panel, everybody here. Very quick question. We all heard, or I'm sure most of us heard, about the tragic news about Yogi Panel recently. And I came in late. I might have already heard some kind of solidarity message about that, or some kind of information, some. So I would just like to an update on Brother Yogi. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Could we have a round of applause for Brother Yogi Panel as well? He was recently killed in prison, a long-serving political prisoner. So thank you, brother, for bringing that important issue up. Anyone else who, please, the sister here. Thanks, Brother Adam. Is there anyone else after the sister who'd like to say and contribute anything? Please.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Brother Eddie said, that after that, that long trek through the arid desert of oppression, that there is an oasis on the horizon for us to look forward to. I agree with Brother Minkah that the international capacity system is indeed in crisis. I'd like to say, the sister, what you were talking about your generation in the United States, and probably from a similar generation to you, back in the 70s and 80s, it was the same for us over here, exactly what you said. I can absolutely connect with what you were saying for us over here. Brother Tongala talked about class struggle, and I think today we are redeveloping an awareness of class struggle. Because the international capacity system is in crisis, because we can actually see today the effects of neoliberalism that was introduced back in that time when we were oppressed. We can actually see the effects of that. We can see the displaced people, the immigration issue, the refugee people looking for places because of conflict or because they're economic refugees. We can even feel for ourselves the austerity within the West and the fact that we are struggling. Most often, even people that would be considered as middle class are struggling today in the West as a result of austerity. So I think really it's an opportune moment for organisations, strong organisations to be established again. And there is that need, as Brother Eddie was talking about the survival programmes that they had for the Black Panther movement, but also empowerment programmes and economic empowerment. Address the issue of people being unemployed and being economically weak. But what lessons can we learn today from the organisations of the past? So what can we learn from the Black Unity and Freedom Party, from what they went through and what caused them to demise, and what can we learn from the Black Panther Party as well, in order to make sure that our organising today is even stronger and more likely to be successful in changing the international capitalist order.
Thank you, sister. Brother Omwale is the back. Thanks, Brother Ali. Anyone else after Brother Omwale would like to say anything? Okay, I think you're the last one, please, Brother.
Okay, warm salutes everyone. There was a meeting about a mile away from this room yesterday. I didn't attend, but I know one or two people in this room did attend. And the meeting was themed around leadership in the African community here in Britain. As I said, I didn't attend, but other people here did. But my understanding from the feedback that I've received was that the meeting was ram-packed with people. So I'm just making a comment here. I'm going to ask if you just comment on also, Eddie in particular. In the Pan-African Society Community Forum, we take the position that the best leadership that we've had in the last 50 years, and I'm talking about the African diaspora now, is the Black Panther Party. And because imperialism understood that they were our best leadership, they rounded them up, locked them up, put them away, and one of the failings of many parts of the movement was that they were not involved in the campaigns for the release of our best leadership of the last 50 years. Now, I wasn't there. I don't think any of the people that started putting themselves, or that were put on the panel as leaders, were involved in the campaigns for them to seek the release of our best leaders in the last 50 years. And also, many of the people that went to that leadership meeting yesterday, for some reason, didn't make it here to meet with an example of our best leadership in the last 50 years. It seems to me that there's a massive contradiction amongst us about what leadership means. I'm not even going to talk about organisation. You can't have a leader without organisation, so without effective organisation. But I just want, Eddie in particular, members of the panel, to comment on what I'm suggesting is a real contradiction, the failure amongst many of us to recognise our best leadership in the last 50 years.
Business. And there's no sort of sense of cohesiveness that I feel within myself. So sometimes when I'm feeling very sort of fatalistic, I feel that it's already too late for me. I feel that in a sense that by the time I make sense of things, if I ever make sense of things, it's already going to be too late and my time for revolting will be past. So in a sense, I've got to make some sort of strategic kind of shortcuts, if that makes sense, as painful as that is to me, because I want to focus on retrieval right now, first and foremost. But I always think about children, and I always think about the turning point from when children are very innocent and they have all these big ideas about the world, and the point at which, when they enter school, they start to be trained to think a certain way, and when they kind of graduate onto, secondary school, university, that they become indoctrinated to become producers and workers. And I recently read an article in the paper talking about how schools aren't doing enough to train their university students into a manner in which they can kind of launch themselves into the workforce with sort of, full hustle and be like the perfect workers that, we all want to see in society. So I just wondered, I wanted to ask to everyone in the room, like, how do you talk to children and what should we do about our children? So that was just it.
Thanks, Sister Rachel. I think Brother Drew, someone wants to say something from the desk. If you could just deal with the desk, thanks. Brother Nelson, please be brief. Sorry, this is the last contribution before we ask Eddie to close.
I'll be brief because there is no Spanish. I'm thankful to the language and also I will speak on behalf of my nation, a nation that fought against South Africa, CIA, even. We defeat them. I have an uncle, my father's young brother passed away for 15 years. He defeated, he passed away fighting the war. He's a martyr. In behalf of all of my nation, I'll be thankful to you too. And you from a nation that give the strength to us, our Black Panthers and Malcolm X. We don't have the time, with all respect, to Martin Luther King. Because we go all our strength, and my uncle will teach you like that is the strength. It was the way that we liberate Namibia and South Africa himself. And today I feel disgusted about South Africa because they betrayed him, because they're killing other Africans. But they're protecting the evil masses. So I'm speaking on behalf of my nation. I'm very thankful, and I can imagine the power that you for 40 years in prison, 44 years. You're bigger than Nelson Mandela, much bigger. You should have a statue, not in England, because that is a place that I would like, by my nation of Mandela. Thank you.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to do is address that issue about the prison strike, that hunger strike, and incidentally, Brother Yogi, Hugo Pinnell, was like a key organizer in that strike. And legal reform. You can't reform the prison system. You can't abolish the prison system. You got to destroy the capitalist structure, and you got to redevelop restorative justice. There is no laws that work for us. Never have been, never will be. And the best we can hope from fascists is reform. So, but having said that, we still have to go in. We still have to work with the people inside. We still have to support the brothers and sisters that are locked down. And we still have to organize, like that brother back there say, to free our political prisoners. This brother's in there now that's been in there longer than I was in there. This brother's in there now that's approaching the amount of time that I had. And the weakness of any radical, political, revolutionary movement is not protecting its warriors, the people that went in front of them. We have to change that. Young people are talking about that. Young people are looking at how to change it. And I think that will change. I can see that in them as I talk to them. So we just have to have a new initiative, because one of the things is, if you don't support the political prisoners today, you will be a political prisoner tomorrow, and who will support you, right? And let me just say this about, we're still trying to investigate what happened to Yogi. He got assassinated, apparently, as far as I can tell, by 2 white guys in the prison yard. He was aware that there was a hit on him. They transferred him out to population, probably for the purpose of carrying out that hit for for anybody that don't know, this was one of the brothers, San Quentin Six, that was with George Jackson. 3 of them, I believe, are out. He was still in. No, 4 of them are out. He was still in, and of course George is dead. So I don't know if this was after years of solitary confinement, if this was a police hit, or if this was a white supremacist hit, or what kind of hit it was, but it was definitely an assassination, right? Okay, and for the sister there, what we did, the Black Panther Party, we worked with the Latino community, and they formed structures in their community, the Brown Berets. We worked with the Puerto Rican community, and they formed structures in their community, the Young Lords. We worked with the poor white communities, and they formed structures in their community, the White Panther Party and the Patriot Party. The only way I think we can develop the unity that we need is that first we need to show by example the work. If we're doing the work, other people in other communities will see that, and they will start doing that work in their community, and at that time, we need to support them just like we need to have them support us, and we need to network across the board to do that, right? Finally, like one of the things in terms of what you were saying about mistakes, obviously we made mistakes. We had a hierarchical structure. And now, in hindsight, you can see that as a mistake. Everybody talks about parties. Well, we had a party structure. We had democratic centralism, but we always had a central committee. We had leaders that rose to the romantic, revolutionary cultist status, or whether they were Huey or Eldridge or whatnot. It's always easy to manipulate people when they become so powerful that they almost assume, either among the masses or in their head, the position of God. And that's always detrimental. I think that hierarchical structure was a mistake. That's one mistake. Another mistake was that we absorbed too many people too fast. Everybody wanted to be a Black Panther. And everybody that wanted to be a Black Panther, we brought them in. Come on in, it's okay. So there was no time for education. In the process also, the street habits and behaviors came. Because it's just like Huey. Huey is, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant people to come out of our struggle. He learned from Malcolm X and all the other people, but he actually was a visionary. But he was also a thug. He didn't have that kind of fear. And you almost, to have a revolutionary, need to not have fear. And so he was willing, him and Bobby together was willing to challenge the whole Oakland Police Department. But that same strength also made him potentially explosive and eventually manipulated. So that structure was a bad structure. The young people today are creating a horizontal structure. They're creating leaderless, they're sharing the leadership on the ground. They come together and they make joint decisions, and they decide how to operate in a collective manner, network by network by network by network. That, in the end, is going to make them stronger, because you can see that you can destroy one network, but the rest of them continue to grow. And as long as they divide, and I'm talking about biology now, as long as they divide and spread, that's going to get stronger. And it's going to be stronger that way than to have a Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Huey Newton. Somebody you can knock off or pay off or buy off or just misdirect, you know. So that's the lesson, horizontal networking and building, because, and I'm going to finish on this like final word, Ella Baker, who is like one of the black women in America that organized the civil rights movement and didn't get the recognition, but get the recognition among Americans, revolutionaries and progressive. She said that a strong people don't need leaders, because we are who we're looking for.
And just thank again all the people who spoke, Comrade Tongagara, Dominique, Brother Minkah, and obviously Marshal Eddie Conway. Just 1 minute to finish off. I'd like to thank Amy as well, who's done the filming. Thanks so much, sister. I'd like to thank the brothers and sisters at Brixton Library, who've been fantastic partners for this event. I'd like to thank Pablo Reed, brother from the BCA, although not directly, but indirectly facilitated this event as well. I'd like to thank Brother Omawale, who's got some brilliant literature on his table. Do have a look. We have nearly sold out. I think we've sold out of all of Eddie Marshall Conway's books. But you can get a copy of the Panther Legacy magazine or the Malcolm X Movement magazine, which are £3 each, or 2 for a £5, which you can use to get signings from hopefully all these comrades and other comrades as well. To finish off, and just before I finally thank everyone here, especially Dominique and Eddie, that the Malcolm X movement has always been committed. Before there was a Malcolm X movement, those who were involved with us were committed to giving that respect and thanks and learning at the feet of the Black Panthers. Because as Brother Omawale said absolutely correctly, you took the struggle to the highest level we've seen thus far in the so-called West. So we are committed to you, but we would like other people to join in developing that direct connection with the Black Panther alumni. And like I said before, we are bringing over at least 2 delegations of Panthers next year. We had 42 organizations supporting our film festival, so we would like more organizations to support in pursuing that work. And I hope that we can contribute in that learning, contribute at least something of what you contributed. Like Bobby Sands said, the revolutionary from our doorstep, the longest colony of the British in Ireland, everyone has their role to play, be you old or you're young, everyone has a contribution to make. So finally, I'd like to close the event and ask you to thank especially our towering comrade who's very much alive with us, and we've got much to learn from him, Marshal Eddie Conway. Thank you, brothers.